What's going on, everyone? My name is Nicholas Merton here at Data Dash, and today is April 23rd of 2021. Well, folks, I hope you all are having a fantastic day wherever you are. And in today's video, I want to dive straight into talking about the recent sell-off we've been continuing to see in cryptocurrency markets, where it was just looking like there was a sign of hope for not only Bitcoin to recover a bit, as well as the broader altcoin space, as Ethereum and other altcoins continue to garner dominance against Bitcoin. A lot of people are curious about whether or not this is a temporary peak or the final peak of the bull run this year. And I think that there's valid concern in the market when it comes to the technical price action, but I'm going to go ahead and talk to you guys about why I haven't made any changes to my portfolio. This is usually where we'd have a sponsor, but I decided today let's not do a sponsor. Let's go ahead and dive straight into it, guys. We're not even going to take a look across the board in the market. It's mainly red at the moment in regards to US dollar valuations. But I want to go ahead and just dive in first to the question that's on everyone's mind. And it's the thing that a lot of people look for when anything goes wrong in the world, at least when you see the symptoms of something going wrong. For example, Bitcoin's price going down. The first thing that's going to jump into everyone's minds, whether you are a seasoned veteran in the cryptocurrency space or just getting started in crypto, it really doesn't matter. Most people are going to ask, why did this happen, right? That's a very rational thing to do. I mean, completely fair. I mean, usually there's cause and effect in most situations, right? But, in this case, just because there might be some factors that would weigh down Bitcoin's price that we can see visually that might be in the headlines, it doesn't mean exactly that this is the key issue here. So I want to go ahead and answer this as simply as possible. What is the problem? Well, I got to be honest with you guys, I really don't think there is any specific problem that's led this down. Now, I have heard a variety of different things. I've heard over the last 24 hours, there's been continuing developments that a missing CEO of a Turkish exchange has been basically leaving very shady signs in this case that they've exit scammed. This was like a major Turkish exchange that had hundreds of thousands of users. Turkey, being a very prominent economy due to its hyperinflation, might have wanted to utilize cryptocurrencies. And now whoever was running this operation or this exchange, it looks like in this case they've run off with the money. Very similar to Quadriga CX in Canada. I'm not here to make that claim whether it is true or not, but this is something that definitely has caused a little bit of fear. But really, in reality, it's only a couple $100 million in crypto assets. And I know that that sounds like a lot, but in all reality, right, there's a crypto billionaire in this case who will lose, a seed phrase in this case that has millions of dollars worth of Bitcoin every couple days, every weeks, right? There's always people who are going to lose money like this. Right, and not to mention whether it's a hack or a malicious insider at a company, or in this case, something just goes wrong. Right, again, a few $100 million is actually not enough to really drag down the market. Right? Now, another thing that people have brought up too is the tax policies that the Biden administration has brought up. And I'm not here to be political at the end of the day. Yes, I can understand very clearly why people would be fearful of a higher, for example, capital gains tax, right? They're talking about more than doubling it in this case, from my understanding, from around the 20% range in this case for kind of the standard capital gains rate. It can vary depending on certain variables, but at the same time, raising that rate for people over a certain net worth threshold, and I think it's around $1 million. To be fair, guys, as much as this is maybe per se a cause of concern if it were to get passed for people investing in markets like crypto or other various markets, to be completely frank, two things here that we need to keep in mind. It's likely not going to pass, in my opinion. There's too much insider pressure here. I don't think that this is, not to be, again, political, an outsider's administration that's going to go up against the establishment. And second off, along with that as well, to be completely candid, so what if they raise the capital gains rate? Doesn't mean that money is not going to be flowing into asset markets. Money has been primarily going into asset markets because even if you have to pay a 40% capital gains rate, you are better off investing in speculative assets than letting it sit in a savings account where you're getting battered down by inflation and taxes on whatever little income you're getting from a savings account. So again, I don't think that either of those really are the cause for concern here. And outside of that, to be completely fair, guys, if you're playing that game of trying to look at the headlines, there's not many other reasons to be fearful, right? So what is it really? Well, there's two problems here that are not getting talked about in the headlines and have to do with very simple things that anyone can observe. You just have to be willing to look at the longer term time frames and observe how market dynamics are playing out. Let's talk about the first one here. First off, in this case, we've not only already been on a stagnation of momentum here. So the first part here is really price, right? As we've talked about on the channel here a lot, and as we just talked about actually I think a couple days ago in one of our recent videos about how Bitcoin might start to enter into a correction, we've been having higher highs here and higher lows. But as much as that can be seen as a bullish thing, right, and it generally should be so long as it's maintained, the more and more these highs get closer and closer and start plateauing off, and vice versa as well, as the lows here start to get closer and closer and start edging out, right? We originally had a low up here in this case. Like if you would have looked at the candles over here, the last few days, the low would be up here. It'd still be maintaining that. But we not only broke down against the line of support there, but we've now started to set in officially a new lower low, right? We, for the first time in all of this journey up here, since back here in the mid part of 2020, we finally have set in a substantial lower low here compared to what we set back here in March. It's very identifiable on the chart, right? It would be one thing, for example, and I know a lot of people will be like, oh, Nick, but couldn't you have drawn, for example, the line over here, back here, when we set this low and we came down, we set a lower low, right? The point here, guys, is that when you take this step back, when you have this price history to actually work with, we see here that we have, for the first time, changed the tone here. The lows are now starting to curve here, right? We're starting to see that we're breaking away from this median line that price would zigzag across. We can't be biased here and say, oh, but I think this is where buyers are going to come in and stuff. Yeah, maybe they will, right? But this is a substantial lower range here than where we were back here in late March. We're back down to where we were back in early March, right? So that's a thing to keep in mind. It's not the end of the world, guys. Sure, in this case, yeah, I'm sorry, guys, if a couple days ago, if like you were at a much better position, it sucks, right? Like there's going to be ups and downs in crypto markets. That should not be a simple cause for concern here, right? Just because you're down, right? The major thing here that is important to note, if again, if you guys agreed with the kind of price analysis that I'm talking about here with the higher highs and higher lows, the next thing you want to look for here to confirm whether or not this is going to be a substantiated correction where we go down to, the low $40,000 range, $30,000, waiting for big buyers to come in, maybe have a full 50% correction from the highs here at 65,000. What you want to look for here is you want to set a basically lower high. This is the last sign you really need to see in order to confirm a bearish reversal, a trend where the bears are taking over and the bulls have stopped buying at these higher prices. They're taking profits more likely, right? So the way that looks here, and again, don't focus so much on the specific price points that I'm picking here. What I'm saying here is let's say, for example, we're done for today. Let's say the sell-off is over. May not be the case, maybe, right? Let's say it is, right? And we start to move back up here a little bit. We get some buyers coming. We come back to where we were back here in late April, right? We start charting up, and then all of a sudden here at an even level like $60,000, we get rejected. We start crawling back down and going down this way, right? The more substantiated evidence you have here of a lower high where the trend starts to clearly have multiple days where it's going lower, that is the price point where I would get concerned, because there is something different this time compared to the other corrections here. Not only was this a multi-month trend where after each correction we would continue higher and we'd still set those higher lows and higher highs, but outside of this as well, one thing we do need to keep in mind when it comes to price, as we had mentioned before, sorry guys, for some reason these drawings, TradingView's been really acting up recently. I've removed some of these drawings and they keep coming back. I feel like I'm like going crazy sometimes, but anyways, you can see here that if we take a look at the bi-weekly chart here, right? The long-term line of resistance here, no matter how you really draw it here, we're getting up towards the general range here where there's been resistance in the past. Again, people will draw it certain ways and stuff, but we kind of talked about an even level of $70,000. As we go closer to that, people are going to start taking profits. And again, this whole narrative that people had about, oh, the corporate treasurers, they're going to buy and they're going to keep, they're going to cause the super cycle for Bitcoin. Guys, corporate treasurers are eager to get exposure to this asset class for sure, but they're not eager to buy your bags 7x from originally being at, 8,000, 10,000, right? They're not looking to pay $65,000 per Bitcoin with hard-earned cash that they've made. It's not that big yet. And I hate to say that. I love crypto. We know it's that big. We know that this is going to be a multi-trillion-dollar asset class. But corporate treasurers like to buy at a discount. They're going to be the people buying in if Bitcoin goes down to the $40,000, $50,000 range, right? So again, I digress here. Like the overall point here, as you guys can see here, BLX doesn't update the up-to-date daily price movements, right? So your corporate treasurers are much more likely to buy Bitcoin when it's down at this price range here. When they can see here on the biweekly chart, right? You need to see here that it's actually starting to come down, and they can actually get in at a decent discount opportunity. Sorry, I'll bring it back here to the chart, but you guys can see it here, right? Like I'd much rather buy at a low $40,000 range than at 66,000 all-time highs. A corporate treasurer is not going to do that, right? What corporate treasurers do in traditional financial markets is that they will go about, for example, having allocations to bonds and stocks and maybe their own company stock, right? And maybe other types of assets or a lot of cash on their books. And what they're going to do is think, okay, well, we've noticed that bond markets are down, like 20%, and they're paying healthier yields now. Maybe we should put some of our cash reserves, or maybe even cycle some of our stock positions into bonds. And they make massive multi-$100 million, billion-dollar inflows and outflows out of these markets. And they have people, again, as corporate treasurers and market makers in this case, who will go out and actually facilitate those orders to help secure the company's purchasing power and make sure that they can preserve the revenue that they've pulled in or the cash flow, right? That's generally how a corporate treasurer is thinking. And again, just bearing that in mind here, guys, right? That they're much more likely to buy in these discounts. So the good news here is that maybe this pullback won't last too long. Maybe this is where people start to realize, hey, we've pulled back a good amount here. If we bring our drawing tool here, we've gone down about 26%. Nice healthy correction point. Maybe at 30%, that might be where some corporate treasurers come in, right? Who knows? But that's the big thing here, is that the price action has been showing us very clearly that corporate treasurers aren't buying it at this level, right? MicroStrategy is not every company. MicroStrategy is religious about Bitcoin, right? Companies like Tesla are much more akin to Bitcoin, right? There are some companies out there, that next wave, the people who are going to follow suit, who are going to be a little bit more passive about it, who probably aren't going to put their entire balance sheet or 5 or 10% of their balance sheet into Bitcoin. They're going to put something like 1%, and they're going to wait till they get that good discount opportunity or the next wave where there's at least some more upside potential. Now, that being realized, that's point one. Point number two that we got to talk about is something I just talked about the other day, and I'm going to rant and rave about it again. And that is, at the end of the day, people continuing to trade on leverage. Borrowing capital that they can't afford to lose and overexposing themselves to trades that they should not be doing, right? And I think at this point, again, guys, as I've talked about, the only people I really feel to be completely candid with you guys, there are some people in the crypto space, large investors, small, who know exactly what they're doing. They know the risk associated. And I feel nothing more than anything, a bit of sympathy, because for a lot of people, it can be like gambling, it can be an addiction. In that case, I feel bad for people. But for the only people I really genuinely feel bad about is, again, the people in this space who are being misled into thinking that this is the way you get rich. That, over leveraging your positions and putting yourself in a position where, oh, sure, maybe if Bitcoin goes up 5%, if you pick the bottom and it goes up 5%, you can double your money with 20x leverage. Or in this case, you could go 100x leverage and, 1% up, you double your Bitcoin. Yeah, it's great. When in reality, that's not the case. In reality, you're setting you up for equitable potential risk of losing everything. And just today, right, whereas the short liquidations, right, and this is something, again, everyone always is laughing at people who are short in the market, right? Everyone's, oh, shorts are so bad and stuff. Shorts are losing at a very normal, healthy rate. What we're seeing here is longs getting liquidated. The other day when we had nearly $10 billion liquidations, we're already at another $3 billion in liquidations here for the longs. Who's really the one taking too much risk here, right? It's the longs, guys. We can see the numbers here, right? Sure, we know Bitcoin's going up to probably 100K, 200K, whatever exorbitant level we think that's possible in this case, right? Sure, you can have all the price targets you want, but if you try to overexpose yourself, right, instead of just holding, remaining calm, or properly taking profits when things are over-exacerbated and waiting for discounts, as some people claim they can do properly, on spot markets, if you're going to try and trade on leverage, you can lose it all, right? So think about it this way, guys. Again, I'm not trying to be like, oh, think about it. You have it less worse than other people, so your problems aren't real. I'm not saying that. But if you're just holding spot, right? If you're just holding Bitcoin, let's say, right, as a lot of users are, okay, you're back to where we were back on March 6th. A month and a half worth of gains wiped out. Yeah, it sucks, right? But I know that for many of you who've been again diligent about remaining in altcoins that have kept up with Bitcoin during this time period, but outside of that as well, have really started to gain dominance here. We can see here that altcoins are still holding up at this resistance range here, right? They're still holding up quite nicely. Right? Now, again, I understand there's Doge and a few anomalies there. If you're not investing in these coins, yeah, maybe not. But again, guys, like all these coins like Uni, for example, right? Uni's back to all-time highs against Bitcoin, right? And if we look at the US dollar pair, like for example with Uni, I'm pretty much with my Uni position, I'm where I've been since back here in March. After a really great rally since back here in December. Still holding out good. And technically, what I still see here is a general trend of higher lows here for the most part. People are buying in. The wicks on these candles are very, very tall in the sense that any dramatic sell side price action is being bought up and usually has a couple of days of green side price action afterwards. Right? I'm just using Uni as an example. I'm not saying that this is like every altcoin in the market, but like ETH BTC, right? Ethereum Bitcoin still holding up towards its all-time highs for this year in this case against Bitcoin, or its relative highs, right? Still keeping on line with the trend here. So again, guys, I would just say don't fret so much about a couple days of sell side price action. It's happened before, it's going to happen again. And if you can't handle that about this market, guys, you got to do one of two things. Either you got to take profit and walk away from crypto. It's not financial advice. But outside of that as well, if you can't handle the swings, literally just dollar cost average in, don't look at it, right? Again, not financial advice. You have to determine if you want to keep exposing yourself to this market. I'm completely fine. And you guys want to know what I've been doing? As I mentioned in the last video, nothing. In fact, the only thing that I have done, to be completely candid, is I've started to move some of my assets, in this case, some of my altcoins, towards interest-bearing protocols, right? So I'm going out there and I'm earning interest on some of my crypto assets to, again, make sure that I can get a yield that will help to hedge against some potential downside in the market. But also as well, just generally, if I have assets I'm sitting on in this case until I really feel bearish on them, in that case, seeing the lower high in prices, right? So I'll go back to Bitcoin's chart just to signify this, right? My mentality is that until I see those lower highs in the market, right? Somewhere like, for example, here, maybe 60K, maybe 55K, one of these big even levels where things start to roll over, right? Until we see that, I'm going to hold strong on my positions, right? There hasn't been a complete full-scale trend reversal. There are occasions where we don't get this rollover here, where again, if those corporate treasurers are going to come raging back in, we might go up and we might completely buck the trend here and continue going upwards. It's happened before, right? But I'm not saying it's likely in this case. I think that we're much more likely to roll over. But that being realized, if I know that there's a chance that we're going to set in that lower high here, right? Not everyone's watching the Data Dash channel here. Not everyone's thinking alike. If there's a chance we can come up here to 55, 60K, I'll wait for that. Like, sure, 48,000 to 55, 60K. Yeah, I'll wait for that. One of those levels where I can see that it's rolling over. And then I'll consider maybe taking some profits or exiting positions. You don't want to absolutely panic sell and let your emotions get the best of you guys when it's probably not the optimal time to sell. It's probably more than anything a more optimal time to take on risk when you've had multiple red candles, right? Anyways, again, not telling you guys to do anything. It's not financial advice, but like, again, as you can see here in price, you just basically don't want to panic. You can see like even the biggest like 5-minute buy candle here, right here on Bitstamp just came in right here over the last couple minutes. Right? This is where whales or larger investors are buying in after larger whales are selling, right? Again, we'll see how things play out, guys. But the biggest thing above all, don't fret too much, right? As I told you guys, I haven't been selling any massive positions in my portfolio. I've just more than anything been holding on, waiting for the technical signs in the market, waiting for any real fundamental catalyst to be bearish. And more specifically, I'm focused on the inflows and outflows. And you can tell that by simply analyzing price. You don't need a dozen different indicators. It's about those higher lows and higher highs and vice versa. When you start setting lower lows and lower highs, that's the sign of the bulls getting weaker and the bears starting to outpace the market, right? People are willing to sell their assets even lower and buy them at lower prices. That's the mentality you should keep in mind when analyzing price. So anyways, guys, I've rambled on enough for today's video. If you like this one, please consider dropping a like, consider subscribing, share with a family member or friend who needs to see this video. I think that's the best thing we can do here in these times. If you made it this far, if you really enjoyed the video, share with a family or friend member. It means the world to me. And hopefully we can kind of get the word out here that, like, again, with these kind of pullbacks, guys, we have to approach them very smart. This happens all the time in crypto. And I'll end on a very good note here, right? This is, again, an unfavorable sell-off here, but just take a look here at the long-term chart, guys. And I'll go ahead and I'll bring it here to the 3-day chart so we can get a little bit more price action in. Right. Actually, no, scratch that. I will do the weekly chart. Right. Not the best week of price action, but to be completely honest, when we look at the logarithmic chart, have we seen this before? We've seen it plenty of times. It's nothing to be dramatically concerned about. So, anyways, guys, that's it for me today on the video. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Take care, everyone.